You are listening to the North American Kings podcast, your traditional masculinity training ground. I'm your host, Glenn Kowalski, founder of North American Kings LLC, a leadership development company based in Cincinnati, Ohio. As we all know, the man brand has taken an absolute beating over the past few decades, and it's our mission to change that. We're going to do that by helping you join the fight to reclaim traditional masculine values. Welcome to headquarters. Training starts now. Welcome back to the training ground, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Glenn Kowalski. We've got a great show planned for you today. One that is incredibly personal to me, but one that we're excited to bring to you nonetheless. So let's get started. First, a big thanks to our friends at Naked Armor Razors and Wet Shave Gear for making some of this happen. As our sole sponsor, they can't make everything happen for us, but they have gone above and beyond to help us cross-promote and offering my listeners a discount for helping in our partnership. This company is run by some great folks who embrace this mission of providing men a superior product. They're in this for the long haul, ladies and gentlemen, with every one of their customers. Case in point, over the life of your blade, your straight razor, after all of the sharpening that you do, if your blade ever needs to be rehoned, Naked Armor will handle that for free. While they rehone it, they'll actually send you out a free shavette so that you can maintain your groomed look. To get started, my listeners can enjoy a 15% discount on anything in their online store by going to nakedarmorrazors.com and entering coupon code KINGS15. Don't wait to enjoy the highest quality shave you'll ever give yourself. nakedarmorrazors.com. That's nakedarmorrazors.com. Okay, so we are finally getting to the subject matter that we were hoping to launch about a month ago. But things come up, things in like the news cycle will come up that directly change the public square. They change the conversation. So we want to get ahead of that and provide you some meaningful feedback on things you're hearing, things you're seeing. But more importantly, we want to show you that this is applied today. You can take this advice today. But we also have kind of a schedule and kind of a thing that we're trying to do in a very tempered and methodical way. So we're getting back to square one here. And today, I want to talk about brotherhood as a fundamental building block of traditional male development. The benefits can be as beneficial as having a wife, which we've talked about in great detail, but of course, it's in a very different way. You know, a wife will help you develop particular skill in an unparalleled fashion where a profound feeling of brotherhood can help you develop different skills in just as potent of a way. So, in this episode, we will be discussing the necessary inputs to creating a brotherhood, techniques on how to accomplish this that even introverts can use. Okay, so we've got a little bit for everybody here. So first, the case for cultivating brotherhood. You know, we're going to start with a personal story. So when I was 18, first year in college, first semester, I'm almost through the first semester, I get a phone call from my father. You know, I was beginning to shift my relationship with him from being just a child to being a fellow adult. And through this development of my skill set that he had actually done, my father did a great job of cultivating skill sets in us. But he had started to delegate big family tasks to me. You know, he had 16, 17, 18 years old. So this phone call was to tell me that everybody was going to move from Wisconsin, and they were living about 30 minutes from where I was going to school, out to Maine, which was a day plus either flying or driving. It was going to take a long time to get to my folks. My father said, "I really need you to come with me. You can choose, but I'd like you to come with me." Dang, right? To be needed by my father, the ultimate stamp of approval. The man who's teaching you to be a man says, "Hey, I need you to help me be a man." Right? And I did some research and I wasn't too thrilled about the schooling options out in Maine. You know, and the potential risk of having to start school a year late in college I've already spent a lot of money on that first year, and I felt like I was already sort of becoming my own person. And I felt like at this point, I don't want to say I neglected my duty, but the duty to myself outweighed at that time the duty to my family. So I decided to stay in Wisconsin. Now, over the next few years, I would discover that even though I chose to stay behind, the emotions that I felt and that I was wrangling with were still largely that of a kid who was left behind, almost abandoned. And suddenly I was alone with no visible safety net. Like my high school girlfriend, the one who I actually gone to that school to be with, left me after the family had left because she felt abandoned by them too. And because of how I handled those same emotions. Like I was not a great boyfriend at the time. And there were some rocky things, of course. But she decided to actively cut it and kind of part ways at the same exact time. So suddenly I was well and truly alone. Now, willfully alone in some respects, and there's no resentment that I hold for my parents, but the things that I needed to replace were very much the same as someone who didn't really have a say in the matter. Now, Brother Jay, who I had been friends with for years, and his mother allowed me to stay in their spare room so that I could maintain in-state status and also so I didn't have in-state status. For those of you who don't know, you will pay maybe 25% more on your college everything for being out of state. Right? So if you're going to an Ivy League school or whatever, if you're going out of state, you're going to need some help to do that, or it's going to be wildly financially more expensive than the education would already be. Right? So they helped me out in this fashion. And my relationship with Brother Jay became far more brotherly through through that time. Right? That summer, I reconnected with Brother Scott, who had actually known as a loose acquaintance in high school. And I hadn't seen him since we graduated, and we weren't really close like in actual high school, but we worked the same job in a different department. And, we given our mutual background and we were forced to socialize. And working as part of this housekeeping crew for the actual school, we found that we actually had a lot of the same interests. So Scott belonged to one of the fraternities on campus, and through our shenanigans at work through that summer, I was slowly introduced to this group over the course of time. Now, fraternities provide supplemental brotherhood where like-minded individuals, and that's key, go through historical rites and rituals and build lifelong bonds of mutual respect and affection. I found a support group in them, a family, to help me become the man that I am today. And I will forever love them for being exactly what I needed, precisely when I needed it. There were father figures. There were motherly, older beta sweethearts and a host of brothers to keep me focused on what was right and to help me forge myself into a man. Now, fraternities, for those thinking about it, are far more than keggers and women, right? There are actual formal and informal leadership training by licensed actual professionals that are provided for free. It's a collection of guys to bounce ideas off of, to learn from. They provide philanthropic opportunities to help you discover your own self-worth and provide something to the community around you. It's a very misunderstood social structure, and one I would encourage you to look into. But building bonds of brotherhood provide boundless benefits, even outside of the structural fraternity settings. Now, primarily, it allows us to practice our cardinal responsibilities. Again, provide. You are providing for each other in a plethora of ways. And it's different for everybody, but there is a structure where you're providing for each other, you're helping each other out, you're protecting each other. There was an old story from way back when where, one of the beta guys is in front of the house and he showed up, and some guy, had a problem with him and didn't realize where he was. And, they started to wrestle a little bit. And then like a hockey game, a porch full of fellow brothers jumped over, jumped over the railing of the porch and kind of broke things up, right? We provide and protect each other. right? We teach. Now, this is the thing that people don't really talk about anymore. Men need a competitive environment to thrive. We all do. Even the introverts. And we're going to get into this in a little bit, but we need to teach each other, and we learn about ourselves in competitive environments. So we have benevolent teachers. If you have the same interest as somebody in a fraternity, you're going to have someone who's actively wants to participate in that with you. Your results, your output, the things that you accomplish will be measured against your other brothers. And rather than somebody who's there to push you down, you have someone who's there to reach a hand out and help pull you up to that next level. It's very, very beneficial. But it's also, you've got a group of benevolent men to correct your behavior as well. So we go to teach, and we morph very quickly into discipline, where if you are not handling yourself the right way, you've got a group of people who love you, who will actively correct you through influence or force. And the idea there is that because they love you and because you've experienced that brotherhood, you're more willing to just accept that than you would just a random dude. All right? This allows you to explore your role within the pack and your potential for other roles. And that's the more important of the two. Finding out what you're capable of is one of the untalked about benefits of being within one of these groups. And it can even be one that you create, you're on your own. I'm not talking about structural fraternities, although it provides a very systematic, constitutionally written, formal, these are your roles and responsibilities to the group. You can create that on your own. I have since leaving. This is something I've been relatively successful at. So the idea here is that if you brought people of like-minded individuals together, and we'll go through in a later segment here on how to do that and what that looks like, what that process is, because it's actually very systemic, and it's very interesting to see that it does follow a pattern, and not one I've actually read about and I've observed. It's really cool. But this the thing that people don't talk about is that you're also, once you participate, you're also seeing how other people do it and fulfill their different roles. And where there's a gap, you learn which ones that you could potentially fill. Again, a very powerful thing. Now, as you grow more comfortable with this in the group, again, you begin acting on instinct and you discover your base position. Right now, I was at work here in the past month, like right now, to date, right now, and walked into a conversation with one of the managers who was soliciting input on which marketing backsplash to use, on a website, and he was looking to see, which one we liked. So, in mere minutes before another meeting, and I'd walking into this conversation knowing I'm just going to bounce right back out. It was a simple, which one do you like, A or B? And I walked up, looked, said B, and just started walking away. And again, I was pressed for time. The manager was a little taken aback by just how decisive the statement was. And to me, again, he didn't ask for input as to why. He was really he just wanted A or B, right? Others were struggling to articulate why they had picked either one or two, but, he wasn't getting any of that information really. And I had somewhere to be. So, he made a comment about it, and all I could think to say, while I continued to exit this large room, was, hey, my role is to be decisive. Just that one. That's my choice. And I found through several social interactions that one, and I mean one, of my base functions for circles that I run in is being the one who can and will be decisive, particularly when the group won't be. I could tell you the first time I ever really experienced that outside of my normal fraternal setting was standing on a street corner with a bunch of my wife's friends and some of their associated dudes, and they're all just talking at each other about what to do next. And I finally just said, hey, we're going to go do this, and just started walking. And lo and behold, everybody did, because all they wanted was a decision to be made. No one wanted to make a decision. So I did, and because I was decisive, and I don't know if assertive is the right word. I wasn't forceful, but because I made a decisive decision for everybody when they wanted one, everybody started walking. So I've seen this time and time again. And through working with groups and socializing, you can find what your roles are too. There's a huge difference between being capable of keeping and holding a vision than it is to provide decisive direction when those in charge will not. And the reason, again, I'm hitting this point is because you're going to find very quickly what those little subtle differences are. And you'll be able to figure out which one you're capable of. And when that time comes, you'll be able to fulfill that role. Then there's the discovering potential. In a group environment, you get exposure to other personality types and leadership types and how they function. When there's a gap, and someone always steps up into the void. That is unavoidable. When they say that there's a leadership gap, or you hear about stuff in the Middle East about us pulling out of Afghanistan or out of Iraq, they're always talking about the leaders, like the vacuum of leadership. Well, they mean that for a reason. It's a social phenomenon. When there's a vacuum there, that means that something will be pulled in. The people will need something to fulfill the functions that those roles provided. And in the large geopolitical sphere, we're concerned about who fills that role. In your social sphere, it's not as detrimental. If you're friends with all these people, generally, who cares who takes the lead today? Right? It's not like going to affect the global economy or whatever, but again, there's still a vacuum there. And those who will fill it will get to explore themselves outside of that base role. Now, it may come about that you're not always comfortable being the mediator, right? Or, in this situation that I'm in, I don't always want to be in charge sometimes. And I've told my wife that I'm looking for guys around that I call deltas. Now, like a delta, just so you guys know, is that triangle, the Greek delta. In math and statistics, it indicates change. So if you ever see on a spreadsheet or in math class, delta something like percentage or delta, another thing, it's indicated by that triangle. That delta percentage, let's say that's the example, that would indicate the change in the percentage from one value to another. All right. Now, like that delta, a delta guy is a guy who's comfortable taking the back seat sometimes. Now, this is normally a guy who's like, you know what, I'm the alpha today. I want to do this with this group of dudes or whoever. Hey, we're all doing this. This is kind of the game plan. This is what I had in mind. Who's doing what? Who's on board? I mean, you guys have all seen that person function. Well, a delta is a guy who can take that back seat. So why is this important? Your typical alpha guy is usually in charge. It's hard for that guy with alpha qualities not to. When two alphas get together, one must be the showrunner and decide which things get, in deciding which dude gets to do that is often a sticking point. Right? Now, deltas don't experience this. Now, deltas experience life very differently. They're willing and capable of being in charge and coming up with an idea, a plan, in order to exercise their will and rallying participants in order to get things done. Now, this could be anything from planning out who's grilling out at whose place or a work project. Now, however, these gems, these dudes, are also able of providing spectacular support and allowing another alpha or another delta dude to take the reins for a little bit. Now, I'm working on this skill set, and it's something that needs to be honed just like any other behavioral trait. But God, do I want to meet other deltas. I love these guys. Now, when you'll get to appreciate this, and we'll get into the appreciation piece here in a minute, but it's taxing to constantly be the one who's got to call dudes up and say, hey, you want to get together? No? Well, okay. Or you got stuff going on, but with a mostly foreign plan in order to even hang out. Now, obviously, being with kids right now, that's a major anchor for me. So this has been a little different, but always being the one to extend the olive branch makes you feel like like you as a friend is an afterthought, right? And to all the alphas out there, is there this one guy that you know that, when you get together every now and then and you like the guy, but like you don't like to really hang out with him a lot? Or you find that guy just doesn't engage beyond, hey, I like you. Let's hang out sometime, and then nothing. Is it because you guys butt heads a little bit when you're together? Now, if this is the case, it's probably because one of you isn't yielding. And it's natural, it happens, but it does lead to tension. And I've experienced this. And, when you ask for, where you ask for assistance doing something and your buddy comes over and just runs the show without your permission, like you needed a couple pointers, but he's out there like managing a project on your property or in your yard or in your room, like whatever the scope is. That's when you experience some of these tendencies. You've got two alphas. You're like, hey, dude, I was going to run the show today. I invited you here to Delta and be a very strong support. You didn't do that. Now we're going to butt heads. And that's where the trouble lies. If you're that alpha guy and you're struggling with this, or if you want a break and you don't know how, here's some help. Okay? Think of yourself as a spotter. For my weightlifters out there, you're the guy motivating, support, and if things fall face first, you're there. For my gamer listeners, your role just switched from lead and like damage dealer to the buffer support, right? Like you're the caster. You're putting debuffs and buffs on folks. You're healing. You're there to help. Your job is to motivate, serve as a safety net of sorts and assist where the lifters or the damage dealers are actually starting to struggle. Now, each role requires trust, skill, and experience, some actual capability, and a willingness to follow. Now, if you're not willing to follow, this gets very difficult. And it also requires a bit of empathy or even affection for the person that you're assisting. With no sense of service to the person you're aiding, it will ultimately fail. It's not going to be as beneficial as people are wanting it to be. Now, one book that is loaded with tips on how to build relationships is authored by the giant himself, Dale Carnegie, famous salesman, public speaker, lecturer, and writer, is famous for several things, including this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. This book is at the top, right here for the camera so people can see this. This book is at the top of any business reading list. This book is extremely easy to read and provides an incredibly sound foundation to approaching interpersonal relationships. Now, there are a few sections to this book. The sections are fundamental techniques in handling people, 6 ways to make people like you, how to win people to your way of thinking, and being a leader, how to change people without giving offense or arousing resentment. Now, each section has a few short chapters, and I mean very short, with examples and further detail. Now, we're going to discuss a few of the subpoints to this because the tools listed can be used today in order to help you start your own brotherhood. Okay, so from chapter 1 in section 2 comes a passage. The chapter title, Do This and You'll Be Welcome Anywhere. Sounds pretty awesome, right? So here we go. So here's the thing. You may feel that this is going to sound degrading when I read it, but please just see the greater point, okay? And it starts with a build up to one of the greatest friends men will ever have, his dog. Okay, if that's the degrading part, just step past that for me, will you? He talks about man's relationship with a dog in very quick order, but he makes 2 points. Quote, you know that behind this show of affection on his part, there is no ulterior motives. He doesn't want to sell you any real estate, and he doesn't want to marry you. Did you ever stop to think that a dog is the only animal that doesn't have to work for a living? A hen has to lay eggs, a cow has to give milk, and a canary has to sing. But a dog makes his living by giving you nothing but love. Now, this point resonates more than people like to give it credit for, right? And Dennis Prager, who I will continue to mention until forever on ever, has gone far enough to say that there's a moral obligation to be happy because happiness spreads, it's contagious, and so are negative emotions. Well, Mr. Carnegie's outline says that what we get for that. He shows what we get for that happiness. Now, be genuinely happy to see people is what we can take away from this. Right? And we all have our different styles, but when we do this, we build interest. People want to be wanted. No one does that better than a dog. Dogs need and want you in a way that no other creature can imitate. Even people don't compare because they require reciprocity in so many ways. Most dogs are extroverts, and that's why extroverts themselves are often labeled as dog people. Believe me, when I'm broing out and I show up, I'm like, dude, I am that dog. And again, once you can kind of, it's once you're not like lowering yourself to that, but you're actually living up to a moral standard, right? Bro, I'm so excited to see you. And people, they just melt. And why? Because they want to feel wanted. It's a very great step to start with. But showing genuine interest, you don't have to be that guy. For extroverts, it's great to have another extrovert around because they can share the burden of holding up conversation. All right? Now, introverts, you will function in a very different way. Now, I was just at a work party for a departing member of senior upper management. And there were a few introverted people who made the attempt and actually made it to the party, which was an admitted stretch for their social skills. Like they said as much. Right, but one even made a point to tell me that she was going to stick around with me and my wife because I'm fully aware of her social anxiety and can hold up most of a conversation on my own. However, even I was drained after a few hours of this. I mean, I had to duck to other groups just to ease into other conversations while somebody ducked into ours. There's a social dance that happens. Now, another extrovert in the situation to share that and feed on would have been awesome for me as the extrovert, right? An introvert, someone who is shy, very soft-spoken, doesn't show a lot of outward emotion. You guys are great, right? I'm not encouraging you to change that, right? I happen to like my style. I am a very different king than the quiet, broody type, right? I'm that guy you would imagine, like very loud and boisterous and big. Like, that's my style. I can't be that other guy and maintain a sense of myself, right? So an introvert coming into this social situation, being eager to see everyone, but still shy, it reduces the effort it takes to maintain a conversation. So don't count yourself out if you don't feel like you will add any value. As an extrovert, introverts are awesome to be around, particularly like when they want to be around. So if you show interest, that Mona Lisa little smile, just, hey, I'm glad to be here. I'm quiet, but you're around a guy like me? Absolutely. Like, if I can tell you want to be around, boom, that's all I need. I'll feel the silence and bring you into the conversation as much as you're comfortable with. Right now, do you think when two introverts meet, if they're interested, and that's the key, when two introverts meet, it costs so little in conversational effort that the little that they put forth will always be enough. Okay? And so the reason I'm going through all of this is to say that no matter who you are or how you function socially, showing interest and being genuinely interested in the situation and being present, regardless of your potential output, can always be met, and I would say will, but that's a personal thing, can always be met and can always be a benefit, okay? Regardless of the mix-up. So, men, I'm going to ask you this other question. I'm going to drive this nail into the ground, okay? Men, what's hotter in a woman, okay? Think about this. You look at an 8 who kind of knows that you exist a little bit, or a 6 or a 7 who is very interested in you and is talking to you and wants to hear about your stuff. right? Dig deep, boys. Be honest. 9 times out of 10, the 6 or 7 wins. And the reason for this is that interest is fulfilling. When someone wants you to be around, it's potent. It's so fulfilling that it will make up the attractiveness gap in this situation. But why? That's the $1,000,000 question. Why is being wanted so important? I'm not even talking in a sexual or intimate sense. Why is it important to feel needed? Let's go back to my example with my father. Glenn, I need you to come with me. Oh, right? To me, it's always been a counterpoint to my own perceived self-worth, right? If you have a strong self-worth, right, and you're moderately self-aware, and you have 0 close relationships, that's going to wear down on you, right? The gap there in your, what you'll sense that your self-worth is out of balance with the perceptions of you that are out there. Again, you've got to be moderately self-aware for this. You have to be able to sense the world around you. When that balance is off, it causes discomfort. If you can pinpoint where it's coming from, all the better. But when you can't, men will struggle. Again, will seem like that agitated bear who's pacing, that something's wrong and you can't see it. You can't get your hands on it. You can't fix it. Right? We become angry, confused, and we take out that growing dysfunction on those around us. So having people who want to be around you proves to us that we're interesting in some way, right? That interest is the acknowledgement that what we've chosen to make ourselves is valued by others. That's crazy powerful. But I can think, I can think that what I've chosen to make of myself is great, but if others don't see that, that's gonna plant the seeds of doubt. And we don't do that well, right? And being needed, my God. What greater show of worth than another person saying that we've invested in skills and experience that they haven't, and now they need it from us. Right? That's the quiet part of service that people don't want to talk about out loud. We want to think that service to others is entirely benevolent and, hey, everybody, like, we're just doing it to be awesome. And you might be, right? But you will feel your service in helping others is continually giving something back to you. It's gratifying. And as you give of yourself to others, it will give back to you. Okay, that's the quiet part out loud. People do not like to talk about that because it's some people feel it takes away a little bit of the the altruistic nature of whatever. Fine. Okay, what I'm saying is it's great to be needed. All right, and brotherhood allows you a marketplace of customers for this interaction. The more friends and brothers, the more customers that you're around, and the more manly you will become. Okay? Mr. Carnegie continues, about the dog. You knew by some divine instinct that you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming genuinely interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people to be interested in you. He continues, people are not interested in you. They are not interested in me. They are interested in themselves, morning, noon, and after dinner. End quote. Now, this is generally true as you're getting to know people. As relationships deepen, this will level out and, to a genuine interest in you. Again, when your wife asks you how your day was, she wants to know. She wants to know because she wants to know about you, because you fulfill her. However, this is the law of nature that introverts, in particular, that want friends, they need to learn how to wield this, okay? Getting people talking about their interests and being genuinely interested in their subjects, like, you'll be in control. And introverts need that, right? So that's the second, that's something that we're going to get into here, like another point that he makes, right? And as an introvert, you can command guys like me to entertain you with conversation without having to put much energy into it by just asking questions. Okay? Another principle that Carnegie goes to is how to interest people. It builds on this previous point, and again, we're making a very slow segue here, but it's about generally being interested. This idea is an evolution of the first. So how do you gain interest? And more importantly, how do you maintain interest? So how do you hold a conversation, or how do you maintain interest in another person? So even if I'm an introvert, how do I pull somebody in and have them be genuinely interested in me, even if I don't want to be too giving? Okay, it's easy to lose interest in one conversation or when bonding starts. So I'm going to Tarantino this. Okay, the lesson here: talk in terms of the other person's interests. Okay, now why would that be important? Right? If I can speak in terms that this person is actually interested in, if we're talking about football and I'm like, hey, like this, even if I pepper in football stuff throughout a conversation, or Magic the Gathering, or Star Wars, or the Army, or again, whatever you're into, why would it be important? Well, this can show continued interest and bridge communication gaps. Okay, it shows I'm interested in stuff that you like. Right? But also when there is a communication gap where there's not I don't quite, sometimes it's just dialects, or, I'm saying something, or I have a frame of mindset that just doesn't jive. Speaking in this language can make it easier to maintain that conversation. Now, it's harder than it seems to maintain conversation in general, right? Knowing what your guests, your friends, your coworkers are interested in will give you that edge, right? Should you need to rely on the subject matter to keep the conversation alive, this will help. But humans can derive meaning out of almost anything. Now, that's one of our biggest strengths, but it's also one of our biggest weaknesses, right? We can misconstrue things. Our specific use of language is very useful in helping us enhance our ability to generate understanding. Now, if you speak in a way that laces your potential friend's interest throughout the actual words that you're using, informing that thought will be more potent. And more importantly, it'll be far more easy for them to accept and understand. Now, those are some of the basic tools and reasons to seek out those brotherly relationships. The reasons remain the same, and I want to be distinctive here. Some philosophers consider the act of friendship to be an actual virtue. Now, why would that be? From the American Philosophical Quarterly, an article titled "The Meaning, Values, and Duties of Friendship" by David Annis. Quote, "To examine the value of friendship from this perspective, imagine our lives without friends. Hobbes described life in a state of nature as solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. This is a somewhat apt description of life without friendship. Friendship may not be necessary to the very existence of a community, as at least some degree of honesty is. But it is significantly related to the living a human life fully." End quote. So seeking deep friendships is critical in our experience as humans. Also, it unlocks our deeper potential to be helpful and more well-rounded members of our communities. Brotherhood is not the same thing as your run-of-the-mill friendship. There are some things that will go deeper that we're going to, go through today. Now, hopefully this will be clear once you hear it. Friendship means what? Right? There's a mutually positive experience between two people, right? And they continue to get together, right? From the article, there's mutual liking, caring for the other's welfare, and interpersonal trust. Now, these make sense, but there's got to be a reason you are trying to associate with this other person. You have to trust the other person enough to become vulnerable. Now, brotherhood requires something more. When it comes to our chosen brothers, not blood, those people that we've made into family, there's a lot to be said for brotherhood, but if these pieces aren't present, they're just words. Okay? Brotherhood requires an even more powerful agreement, partly because you're creating familial level bonds by choice rather than by blood or obligation. To become brothers, you must pass through this gauntlet, but you must also accept a familial level of responsibility. Now, this is where most friends fail to live up to the bonds of brotherhood, and that's fine. Stay friends. You don't need to create that level of friendship. I encourage you to do so. I encourage this audience to strive for that greater relationship. But most friends get a sense that there's more duties that come with this and more responsibility. And for someone, that they've chosen rather than like an actual family member, they falter. Yes, I said duties and responsibilities. We've talked about the virtue of duty, right? That responsibility. That's fine. Right? If you can't agree to do more, just know that that's where the relationship stops. Good friends. Right? There are, and these responsibilities are entirely real. And if not entirely specific in function, they don't need to be. Now, from the article, a quote from Aristotle again. Quote, "The gravity of an unjust act increases in proportion as the person to whom it is done is a nearer friend. It is, for example, more shocking to defraud a bosom companion of money than of a fellow citizen. To refuse to help a brother than to refuse it to a stranger, or to strike one's father than to strike any other person. It is natural that the element of justice increases with the nearness of the friendship." End quote. Now, this implies duty on a naturally occurring level. He did it. Again, Aristotle has presented us with a pure truth. The article continues from the author, quote, "In friendship, there is a mutuality of affection, sharing, concern, and trust. This mutuality, I'm sorry if I'm butchering that, is the basis of special responsibilities. It isn't merely that it is nice for friends to help, to provide psychological support, but that we expect our friends to act in this way, are surprised when they don't, and frequently feel betrayed and not just harmed if they intentionally let us down. Friendships are built over time, and the past behavior, understanding, expectations, and loyalties create a special bond that produces special responsibilities." End quote. If you're unwilling to accept responsibility in this level, brotherhood cannot be achieved. You've heard me tell stories of Brother Clark and his car troubles. I could not let that situation continue unaided. I love that guy, truly, as blood. Screw what I had planned for the night. If I could save him a few $100s, I would, and I did. Now, Brother Scott and Brother Clark have taken me in and provided me a roof over my head. No questions. They both heard me, a grown man, cry in both terror and despair. Okay, neither have wavered. Our relationships have been strained at times. It happens. But through that strain, our relationships have grown stronger. And as you get older, your family must also acknowledge this level of brotherhood. Now, Brother Jay from Wisconsin, he just came to Cincinnati to visit in this past week over the break. Now, since our teenage years, he's had, quote, walk-in privileges at my family's home, acknowledged by my folks. Found out he still does 15 years later and years apart. Now, even my wife and children regard these men for who they are because the bonds of brotherhood are easy to see when they are genuine. Now, my relationships with Brother with Brother Jay started when I was a little as a busboy at the Red Lobster in Appleton, Wisconsin. I was 16, and I bet you guys can imagine how I was at 16, right? Cocksure, athletic, good-looking, and I had hair back then. The works. So Brother Jay was like the head busboy, and by status alone rather than title, and he did not like me. And I mean at all. Jay is much more reserved. He's a traditional guy, and he's a genuinely great guy. Now, my personality can be abrasive if you couldn't tell, right? It's almost an acquired taste, especially at 16. Now, our relationship thawed overnight. Now, wait. Let me rephrase that. Over the course of one night at the restaurant. Okay? On a Friday and Saturday night, a Red Lobster back in 2005 generated traffic. They were packed. Normally, we had 4 busboys, or bussers. They could, there were some girls too. So normally there were 4 bussers on, covering the entire restaurant, one per each quote unquote section. We had certain tables we covered. The faster you bus, so for those process oriented folks, the faster you bus, the faster tables get sat and the easier everything else gets. Now, beyond that, you don't get large waits in the front when tables turn and they pay at a faster pace and servers make more money and there's more food and people have a good genuine experience. There's a 1,000 reasons why you want tables to flow in and out of a restaurant. Okay? And busboys, believe it or not, if you guys start in this profession, and I encourage you to, you will learn a lot about process. You'll learn about yourself. Get a job. Start providing for yourself. But busboys are a key function in a restaurant. And I thoroughly enjoyed the work. And again, I had some of the greatest years of my life there. Right? Now, when we had 2 bussers call off on a Friday or Saturday night, I forget which, and we're dealing with, you're dealing with high school level folks. So yeah, it happens. People just call off. So Jay and I were left alone and we went into survival mode. Now, I yielded to his experience, relied on my growing skill and endurance, and we crushed it. It was an extremely hard night. One nugget from how to win friends and influence people is, quote, if you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. So Jay and I ended up, in the pit, and that's where all the dirty dishes, the 2 busboys would take a tray full of dirty dishes back into the kitchen. We'd both go to the pit and we put glasses in these racks, and we put plates, and we scrape plates off and then put them in this little tray section. And, that's kind of where all the trash went. And, we ended up there at the same time, which it doesn't happen all night, right? Things, we were on the downslope with regards to traffic. So we actually had a moment to catch our breath. And I took that moment to ask Jay's advice on how to be a better busser. Now, I remember the look of surprise and then cool contemplation on his face as he reconsidered me. Right? He gave me an honest answer. Now, some of the things I already knew I needed to improve on. Other things I just disregarded. And then there were 1 or 2 things that I hadn't considered. So it was a worthwhile conversation. And I thanked him, thank you, appreciate that. I'm going to do that. And then bounced. I'm out. Now, Brother Jay may or may not know this, but while I wanted to improve and I did want his advice, I also had that conversation on purpose. It was the first step, speaking to a common interest that we had. It was me saying, hey, I can be humble. I'm acknowledging that you are the man. There were a bunch of reasons why I put myself out there to even ask the question, because I probably could have figured some of that stuff out on my own. Right? But friendship requires 2 processes to happen. One is a checklist of things to acquire. Okay? You'll need to build friendship and then brotherhood. You'll need 1, a common history. Okay, something that you both have been through either together or separately that give you some common ground. When conversations fail or when interest levels dip, common history, something. That's why, work conversations, if you guys are ever at a work party and you guys continue to talk about work, right? That's because that's your common history. That's your common ground. That's why you guys even know each other. Okay, so that's a fundamental piece that cannot be discredited or discarded. Okay. Second thing, you need to have a set of shared values. All right. To be friends, if you guys are on total different planets with regards to things that you think are moral or just or even just, hey, this is right and wrong. That is something you'll need to start, right? You'll also need to have at least 1 common interest, currently. And sometimes these are interchangeable. There also needs to be socialization. Like, you do need to spend some time to actually physically together. Okay? My relationships ebb and flow, especially over the years and especially over distance. Right? I still call brother James. I call him once a week. And I may speak to him once every 2 weeks. Right? But it's going to be strange because we're maintaining here. But when we physically get together, that's when the brotherhood continues. Now, you need to have achieved what they call gut level communication, okay? And I'm going to define that in just a moment. And there also needs to be strain. Now, this is a long-term thing, but you guys, if you never fight, you cannot build that deep level friendship without disagreement. You disagree, you guys get together, you resolve, you go through that process, and then you decide, hey, this is still worth it. That builds a deeper bond that tightens the thread that binds you together. Okay? Now, to moving forward, gut level communication is one of the most potent and substantial types of communication that's out there. Okay? You're communicating internal feelings with the highest possible risk of personal rejection. And you're also relating experiences and you're relating how you feel. Okay? The second process that happens, it happens in stages, which we'll define here in a few moments. Okay? So let's examine the situation. Brother Jay and I had a common history or work, right? Some gauntlet we had been through together that forced us to be on the same side that night. We had a shared value to get work done and to achieve excellence. We were forced to socialize. Like, I couldn't buffer between the other bussers. It was just us. We had to communicate, and we did. We had a common interest in the situation where we were put together, forcing us to be allies, at least for the time being. And I bridged the gap by adding a weak approximation of gut level communication. All right, and strain would come later. So what I'm saying is, this situation is, again, the result was the smoothing of a relationship, greater communication, and performance at our jobs. We killed it that night. And success at the end of the night. We achieved greatness. Now, I don't know if our bosses gave us a free meal after that, but we did every now and then. But we did get bragging rights for sure. Our bosses were for sure thrilled that we could both hold down the fort on one of the busiest nights out there with just the two of us. All right, then you cap things off. We were given the extra bonus of the night, the extra nugget to help solidify a friendship. We were given a common enemy. Okay, I can't stress this enough. If you if you can't find common ground, finding a common enemy will serve just fine. Okay, Heather, the hot blonde hostess, gave us some extra chores before we left. Kind of spoiled some of our revelry, right? Particularly after the day we had just fought through. She got on both of us, and regardless of how we felt about each other, we knew we did not like her at the time. And that's why sports teams are needed. That's why they need to remain apolitical, because they can bring people of two completely different ideologies together to cheer for one side and to hate the other. All right. And in this case, icing on the friendship cake, believe me, the next time I saw Jay in public, the first thing out of our collective mouths were, God, Heather. Right? Now, of course, it was petty, and our mutual relationship with Heather was fine after we had done some brooding over the Monday and Tuesday where we didn't work. All right? But the effect was fulfilled. Now, I mentioned a second process that needs to happen in order for friendships to form. This is a defined systemic process. It happens almost consistently in these stages. All right, it's an evolution of sorts. So we can see this happen over and over again in relationships, both in business and and socially. So thank you, God, for nudging me to keep my important notes from college, COM 102, interpersonal communication. Here you go, folks, chapter 4. The stages are initiating, experimenting, intensifying, integrating, and bonding. Okay? Your relationships as they grow will take this path. Both, again, it could be a friend, could be a brother, could be a girlfriend or a wife. You will go through these stages, okay? So here they are. And initiating is where the superficial water cooler type conversations take place. Like you're feeling a person out, you're gauging interest, you're there just for the hell of it, right? Now here, there's no risk to you like that. And that's the part here. You're gauging this person's interest. You're just kind of getting a taste of them. There's no risk. You don't have to put yourself out there in any respect here. Okay. Now, experimenting is the step in the process where you decide to stick around and actually talk to this person repeatedly, right? The uncertainty level, in this particular spot, that's where it's reduced a little bit, right? You start to put yourself out there and you start to be a little bit more confident that this might, be a socially, like the social risk here, the risk of rejection. And they talk about this in relationship and personal communication. The amount of rejection you're willing to, you think you might experience gets reduced in this section here. Okay. Now you decide to put yourself out here, out there a little bit. You do some social bonding. You go out and hang out together in groups, interactions, where you begin to check off the socialization box that I mentioned before. Right. You need to spend time together to be friends. Right. This is where that starts happening. Experimenting, intensifying. That's where the relationship starts to gain momentum. You start to form and agree on a shared set of values. Okay? Now that's where, again, we start to actually, regularly see these people, regularly begin to be friends. Okay? Integrating, this is the intense part. Okay? Integrating is where you begin to act as a single unit. Okay? Now, I had this with Brother Scott over the final years of our time in college. We had moved in together, right, through junior year. We worked in the same building, but we were in different departments. Okay, so we started our relationship. We worked in the same place, and then we worked for the same structure, at the college, but we worked in separate departments. I worked in upholstery. I was fixing furniture and doing stuff like that. He was in grounds and maintenance. Okay, but we still had the same major. We had almost identical class schedules because we had worked it out together, just the most efficient way of flowing through our major. Now, on one of our teachers, thought Scott was sick one day during senior year when on the first day of class, we didn't arrive together. Right now, he was asking because if you had, the school policy was that if you had missed the first day, you were dropped from the class by force. And somebody who was on a wait list would actually be pulled in. It's just one of the things that you could maneuver and hope for in, making your schedule what you wanted to, especially if the class size filled up. Now, the teacher wanted to make sure that if there was an excuse that he was aware of it, right? He was like, I don't want to drop Scott. I know he's a legit student. So what do we do? And we laughed a little bit, but because I said, no, he's going to be at your class at 7:00, not like this one here at 5. And we had a little laugh. We went through class, and Scott and I, met later. So that level of integration is hard to achieve, but it was a staple of my coming of age tale that I wouldn't trade for anything. But that was us being seen, like it's Glenn and Scott, like those guys are together. Like here's the evil twin, here's the not so evil twin, right? and you guys, the people who knew us, you guys can decide which one was more evil, Scott or me. But finally, we get to bonding. Okay, now bonding in this process is the stage that's a little bit more formal than it sounds, right? This is where we go through actual social rites and rituals, and that are just far more than hanging out. You're going to family events together, like moving in together, being someone's best man, going through to the bachelor party, christenings, you name it, right? You're going through and you're fulfilling these particular roles. Now, the important part of this is that these chosen brothers are integrated into your formal familial settings, right? I'm friends. I know personally the parents of everybody I've talked to, or I've talked to you about. Like these brothers I mentioned have achieved this status through every one of these stages. Now, your blood family will come to recognize the importance of these gentlemen and what they mean to you. And that's the critical piece in maintaining this brotherhood, right? Now, I was the best man at Brother Clark's wedding. The first line in my speech read, Leslie, the hardest part about writing this speech was trying to make it sound like I didn't love Clark as much as Katie does. Well, here it goes, right? And it got a lot of laughs, right? And I think part of that was because of how true this statement was. The quote-unquote bromance that people had made jokes about was very real. And acknowledging that brotherly love in the fashion I did resonated with people in the room, and the bride included. Right now, if your wife cannot accept one of your chosen brothers or comprehend your relationship, that's going to make things hard and strained, and it's going to make it hard to maintain, right? It's going to be harder for your wife not to understand that, for your family to not understand that. Like, she's part of your daily life, where you reside. Eventually you're going to have your own place outside of your parents. Like, if they don't get it, okay. If your wife doesn't get it, that might be a problem, right? So integration to the actual family is important. And if you don't have one, then you know what? You're there, right? They are family now. And you can rest assured that that's the case, right? But that's why I'm thankful for my wife, Kelly, who has an unparalleled understanding of me. She encourages the fulfillment of my duties to my family and has fully embraced the bonds of brotherhood that I have forged and am in the process of forging over these many years we've spent together. So for you men, I cannot encourage you enough to begin building these bonds in stronger terms. Realize that this process is going to take years. Okay? Also, remember that this process, and because it's a process, it can be managed. And if it can be managed and it can be worked on, and if there are bumps in the road, those can be mended. Okay? It's so sustained, right? That these things can and will take time, effort, and there will be problems. I mentioned strain. I'm not kidding. There will be strains in your relationship. There will be bumps. There will be things that need to be fixed, right? And some of my brothers, I spent time not talking to because we had it out. But we come back together and you still love each other. That's the point, okay? Now, if it can be managed, it can be mended. Now, I use the word brother a lot, okay? Lot. I am the epitome of a bad Hulk Hogan meme sometimes, okay? But from Mr. Carnegie, in something I realized a long time ago in that book, his 7th principle in this amazing book, right? Again, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Go get it today. He states, give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. Now, when I call a regular guy brother, it's for two things. It's for two reasons. It's acknowledging that our situation will force many of the fundamental building blocks of brotherhood into existence. Hey, we work together. What's up, brother? Like, we're going to be forced into a lot of these situations. Like, I'm acknowledging that. But giving them this reputation, this title to live up to, has the same function as an invitation. Right? It's signaling that I am open to a relationship that could lead to bonds of brotherhood. It beckons them to become. Right? For those who don't have the will or desire to, they will remain just words. I'll maintain my the persona of bro, which I'm cool with, right? And and those words mean nothing to that person. But for the men who see the beautiful offer being made, and for those who have achieved it, they can feel a difference in the same words. Now, only they will ever know the strength that you can be given from a peer who can truthfully say, I love you, brother. Okay, that's our show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Glenn Kowalski. Thank you very much for tuning in today. If you liked this episode, please follow and subscribe for free. Also, please leave us a 5-star review, and that helps us get the message out to more and more folks. We're on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, and wherever else you get your content. Good luck out there.